Bilingualism Today with Paola Bohórquez, Argemiro Padilla, and Andrés Morales. Analyzing the 21st century. Bilingualism Today.
Welcome to our 5th episode of Bilingualism Today. In today's program, we are going to provide analysis of the constructs of facts, trends, and tensions regarding polycultural relationships, the resulting considerations and influences on identity and citizenship. In addition, the analysis of some of the current strategies to cope with all these phenomena regarding power roles, hegemony, territorialization, and colonialism presented in the previous century during the different great wars and political tensions. Ayata and Aiden, 2022, stated that one starting point is the existence of large groups with characteristics different from the majority of populations, product of migrations caused by natural disasters, change in the state's borders, and direct or indirect conflict. Another great contributing factor, according to Puch 2016, is globalization, which has catalyzed the relationship between cultures and social groups in a multidirectional way, and at the same time has created a profound structural transformation in societal dynamics around the world, through economical cooperation, societal transactions through the World Wide Web, phenomena included in the category of cultural flows. As a consequence of post-structuralist trends which raised aiming to deconstruct phenomena in order to provide critical perspectives standing from different disciplinary points of view, creating a multi-threaded discourse in reaction of the previous era. In 2021, Rodriguez stated that one important trend to cope with this emerging phenomena is that the consideration of cultural diversity in the educational field makes us reflect upon the implications of challenging the pedagogical instruction and didactic strategies to meet the learner's needs and interests, as the new social, economic, cultural, sociolinguistic, and political conditions influence the students' lives directly or indirectly. Well, today we are going to go further with the different threads of this discourse in terms of identity, citizenship, polycultural phenomena, and decolonial discourse. Let's welcome the analysis team, Paola Bohórquez.
Hello.
And Argemiro Padilla.
Hi everyone.
After a quick glance at the background, let's start analyzing the first phenomena, interculturality. Argemiro.
Yes, Andrés, and I will start talking about interculturality because in education, this term is crucial in promoting understanding and respect among cultures. In multicultural societies, including vulnerable and rural areas, intercultural education can empower students and teachers to develop critical thinking skills and cross-cultural communications abilities. But what is interculturality? Well, interculturality in education refers to the recognition, respect, and inclusion of diverse cultural perspectives in the classroom. According to BAN 2015, it involves creating a learning environment that values and integrates cultural diversity and aims to promote understanding, tolerance, and empathy among students from different backgrounds. Intercultural education emphasizes the importance of understanding and appreciating cultural differences while also recognizing commonalities and similarities across diverse cultures. In practice, intercultural education involves curriculums design that is inclusive of diverse cultures, as well as teaching strategies that promote active engagement with different perspectives. It also involves creating a classroom culture that is respectful, empathetic, and inclusive of all students, regardless of their cultural backgrounds. In vulnerable and rural areas here in our country, Colombia, where resources are limited, community involvement and cooperation can be crucial in creating successful intercultural education programs. This may involve the collaboration between educators, community leaders, and organizations to develop relevant and engaging curriculum and activities that reflect the cultural diversity of the community. Taking into account all of these definitions about interculturality, it's necessary to study that there are several factors that are contributing to tensions and trends in interculturality in education in vulnerable and rural areas. Firstly, There is often a lack of resources and funding in these areas, which means that schools may struggle to provide adequate support for students from diverse cultural backgrounds. Secondly, there may be a lack of cultural sensitivity and understanding among educators in these areas, which can result in cultural misunderstandings and conflict. Thirdly, there may be a lack of awareness and appreciation for the contributions and perspective of diverse cultures in the curriculum and teaching materials used in these areas. In response to these challenges, there are several initiatives and strategies that can help to promote interculturality in education in vulnerable and rural areas. These might include providing targeted training and support for educators, investing in resources and materials that reflect diverse cultural perspectives, and promoting cross-cultural interactions and dialogue among students and educators. Additionally, efforts to build stronger community partnerships and involve families and community members in education can be important in fostering greater understanding and acceptance of diverse cultures. Well, with this short explanation, we should establish a relationship with other aspects that make part of the big concept of cultural diversity. Paola, could you tell us about the next category?
Yes, good intervention, Argemiro. It is important to recall that these categories regarding cultural diversity are strongly connected. And when talking about identity, it is understood as an ongoing process of self conception, self construction, and the revision of this self. It is influenced by sociocultural factors, history, and traditions, as stated by Blum in 1997. That's why citizenship is one of the fundamental cornerstones of society. It refers to how education supports students' development and how it extends to the political, social, and cultural areas of communities, since it reflects on the way people live together and the moral development. Identity and citizenship are built from education in order to promote freedom and equality, conceived as the opportunity to participate in democratic processes. Some different approaches have been considered to reconcile the integration of vulnerable and rural areas communities into the nation state through education, with their claim to maintain and develop their identity, language, and traditions. With this intention, some trends have emerged in which identity and citizenship aim to foster academic spaces that emphasize on different moral values like participation, democracy, interpersonal relations, and tolerance, as stated by Builders and Group in 2019. Moreover, there is an intent to establish policies that promote diversity and equity in society. Unfortunately, some tensions appear in this exercise. First, many vulnerable and rural areas communities like indigenous have faced some dominant strategies like assimilation with the suppression of their language, with the purpose of building a unified nation, bringing with it a social inequality gap. And also, many indigenous or minor communities have advocated for the provision of education in their native language as a means of preserving their cultural heritage and promoting a sense of belonging. However, it has not always been supported by the government or mainstream education systems. Also, there is a lack of training and preparation for teachers to tackle pedagogically the sociocultural conditions of students. So, in response to these tensions, there is an urgent need to have an education with identity, as was stated by Contreras in 2021, which recognizes the historical, political, and cultural background that motivates reflection through critical thinking by generating social structures through a decisive citizenship. Society can recognize the political and pedagogical functions regarding education and the possibilities it brings to enrich the educational processes with different perspectives found in the educational community. So far, we have discussed some categories about cultural diversity and the gaps that have emerged due to the different political and social perspectives. So now let's listen to Andres talking about the last category in discussion for this episode.
Exactly. And one of the pedagogical trends created to cope with this cultural gap is the decolonial discourse. But what is this decolonial discourse and pedagogies? Well, Ortega in 2016 stated that it starts from the concern of cultural perspectives, political and economic changes, and power roles analysis in Latin America and the Caribbean, including historical colonial processes such as exclusion, dominance of knowledge, and inferiorized practices. All this background lays base for the emerging of the critical position, the decolonial thought, the acknowledgement that Latin American people have been colonized and have been repeating stereotyped cosmovisions without the possibility of developing a critical capability and contextual thought, which becomes the fundamental framework on which decolonial pedagogies can emerge. In summary, decolonialism is defined by Ortega and others in 2016 as a resistant stance in order to create ruptures with imposed stereotypes and thought in order to build alternatively. Hence, decolonial pedagogies are defined by the same author as the search of an alternative construction that differ from traditions used in classrooms and general educational spaces, questioning from that perspective the different social exclusion and policies with which people coexist in terms of epistemology, ethics, politics, economy, and social dynamics. This perspective has created different trends and tensions regarding decolonial thought and pedagogical practice, which aim to promote dialogue in transformation based on the observation of subjectivities to establish relationships and at the same time foster cultural contact and exchange in everyday life. Also aims to the construction of critical and reflexive thought in order to question traditions and historic exclusions, acknowledge inequities, and foster transformation in social realities through education that raises awareness and critical perspectives in the stakeholders. And finally, seeks to evaluate each cultural group in its unique differences and identity, promoting tolerance, bringing down barriers and the inferiorization of the other by having respect and a dialogical interaction which help contemplate one another and themselves, the contemplation of their own culture, in order to transform and build a new society. Now, from a critical perspective, there seems to be no neutrality in the dialogue and the colonial thought. It is apparently biased with a belligerent role that assumes epistemology, ethics, politics, economy, and the social dynamic. It is still colonized, which becomes a self-victimization role based on hasty regeneralization. For instance, not all traditions are product of colonialism, but collaboration and cooperation in different areas like technology, science, economy, politics, and innovation. Yes. On the other hand, despite of that, many communities, including indigenous, have suffered too many interventions in time as a result of colonization. Many of these communities have adapted to new conditions after having transcultural exchanges, hence the consideration of the volitive factor in each community. Now, let's reach some conclusions within all these phenomena regarding polycultural relationships, citizenship, identity, and decolonial pedagogies.
Okay. Yes, Andres, and thank you. And we can say that today we conclude that to address these challenges, there needs to be targeted and culturally appropriate programs and support services in place to assist these communities. This could include providing extra funding and resources for schools in vulnerable and rural areas, establishing bilingual education programs, and ensuring that the curriculum reflects diverse cultural perspectives and experiences. Thank you.
Yes, and I would say that active participation in critical positions regarding national policies and legislations are expected, but further preparation is required for citizens and educators in order to have the competencies to make sustainable changes. All of this is only possible through a formative and transformative curriculum as a result of educational policies, so individuals participate in the strengthening of society's well-being.
Yeah, and regarding the colonial reason, there are many positive aspects to highlight. It allows pedagogical self-reflection, fosters critical thinking towards the educational practices. The respect for the other is crucial, but there is also the need to consider that the other and self as part of a bigger community. Even globalization has facilitated that. And there is still ground to cover with these pedagogies, and some of them are under continuous academic review, opening the possibility for new strategies that could close the gap in vulnerable rural areas and other multicultural contexts. With all these conclusions, we come to the end of this chapter, and thank you for watching us, and see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.